What a gif.
Oh yeah, that's Steven Seagal dancing.
I could tell.
Are you impressed?
Oh. Are you looking at our chat log or something?
Yeah. We just it just says
up.
3:30. Got it, and then Seagal dancing. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Flashback Entertainment System.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or you know what? This is also a Mario Magic. That's another sub-series we're gonna get going. But I'm Gooey here with McKenna, as always.
Hello.
And we are joined by our good pal Masis. What's up?
It's been a long time since you and I have recorded anything.
I know. I think we still have a outstanding definitive ranking to do.
I think we're still at war as well, aren't we?
There's like one person out there who comments on literally everything we ever post or I ever post that says, "What happened to Masis Hagopian and Twilight Princess Warfare?"
Well, I mean, I think one can conclude if somebody goes missing during war,
they're MIA. We're gonna have to do a Rambo 2 style rescue on you.
Okay. All right. Don't give away too much of our future video ideas.
Oh, I like that. I like the idea of me coming in Twilight Princess coming to rescue you somehow.
Well, I know you're reading the manga, so
we're gonna come across you on one page.
Spoilers for book 6.
So yeah. I'm glad we could finally have you on because you're a key figure in I think both of our lives in the podcasting world. So it's I feel like I wouldn't be podcasting still if you and I were not friends. So it's good to have you.
Well, great. When you told me about this episode's topic, I got really excited about it.
Yes, you were obviously the first person I thought of. But before we get into it, just related more to our show in general, I think we like to usually give all our guests an opportunity to also just say what's their story with the Nintendo 64 being our main show topic. Masa, just the Nintendo 64 in general, before we go back, where did that hit you in your life?
So I got a 64. My oldest brother bought it for me for, I think it was my birthday, but it was not. All right, as the experts, what month did it come out in the U.S.?
September 96.
September 96. Okay, and I think I was a October 97.
Okay.
Person, because I remember getting it, and I had Super Mario 64, and shortly after we got Mario Kart, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Mario Kart out by Mario Kart was out by then.
That was early 97. Mm-hmm.
So we had those two games, and that was, I think, the two stereotypical games that everybody had.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah, those were probably the big console sellers at the time, for sure.
And then, obviously, I believe it was Christmas that year. I had, and one of my buddies, or their parents, they bought me GoldenEye.
Yeah, all right. You get all the classics.
Oh, yeah. And then, of course, obviously, down the line with The Legend of Zelda or with Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. But, truth be told, the N64 was still an era where I was 100% reliant on gifts in order to get games.
Yeah.
So
same.
I couldn't really pick up games that I wanted to get. I remember going to the game store and wanting to get certain things, but it was out of the question, But irony is, I think the games I spent the most time on the N64 were some of the later, which I think you'll get to them in a few years, I think. But
maybe a decade.
The later multiplayer wrestling games.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
to me, those are like the definitive games for the console, and what I've probably spent like hundreds of hours playing.
Oh,
Even
for
more
sure.
so than the Zelda games, I say.
That's crazy. That's crazy. For people who don't know, you run a Legend of Zelda website. So you saying that is like, that's kind of groundbreaking news, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know. Mercy greater than sign Ocarina of Time.
Some might say that's a good wrestling sign, actually. But I like what you're saying about like I was kind of the same with like still needing, there's a couple games I bought with money I somehow got as gifts and stuff like that, but I was pretty much the same, relying on gifts. And that's one thing that's kind of fun about the podcast for me is that now it's like I'm getting to play basically like every game I ever wanted to play and more. You know what I mean? Like just like living out my childhood dreams of gaming.
And I was like so reliant on my oldest brother for getting games because there's a big age difference. He's 12 years older than me, so he bought probably like 80% of every game I owned up through the N64. And the like this was during the era where, because we had a PlayStation 1, and I think there was this viewpoint of like the PlayStation was a more mature console where
Definitely,
the N64 was more for like the kids, I guess. Yeah. So like me being like a 10-year-old when this console came out, like my brother was 22, so like any game, like, so he was into more sports games and then some miscellaneous other games that he always bought for the PS1. So we had like during that like era, we had way more PS1 games than we ever did N64. But even so, I still don't think I played the PS1 as much. The N64 was out in like the basement, whereas the PS1 was in his bedroom.
Oh yeah. So it's more like he's gotta be involved or something, yeah.
Or he has to not know we were playing.
Oh yeah. One or the other, no middle ground.
Will it be you? Will your family be the first to witness the birth of the incredible Nintendo Entertainment System? Will you be the first to see, to touch, to play with Rob, the extraordinary video robot? He follows the commands you put on screen to help you tackle even the toughest challenge. Will you be the first to raise the incredibly accurate Zapper and play games like Duck Hunt and Hogan's Alley? The first to build a library of game packs like Kung Fu and Golf, even games like Excitebike that you program yourself. Will you be the first to get all this in one package? The Nintendo Entertainment System, where video technology is more than a game.
We thought it would be fun to kind of go back and, give more context and kind of also experience some things, like in McKenna's case, I think pretty much every game for the first time. Mm-hmm. But we've been doing that with a lot of our series, like kind of, when we talked about Star Fox 64, we went back and talked about the SNES game. And now that we've gotten back into doing that, we've been trying to go back and look at like Mario games, for example. But then when we were looking at this, we were like, why not talk about the console that kind of led to where we are now in our podcast, which is the NES. It was not Nintendo's, I guess, like technical their first console. I guess they had dabbled in it before, but this is really like what established them as a console manufacturer. So we thought this would be a great place to kind of start doing that. And Moss, you were the first person that came to my mind, like I said, because I've as long as I've known you, you have been a massive NES fan and collector, and to like that, when I think of that console, like you're one of the first things that come to mind. So how did you, what was your experience with it? Because we're like of a similar age. Like by the time we were like into gaming, I feel like the NES was already kind of, close to being a retro console.
Yeah, like this was not. So I remember having an original Nintendo. Oh, my oldest brother did, but this is not my era. Not your era either.
Mm-hmm.
And like there was only a very brief window that I remember when I was very young that I was playing the original Nintendo. And truth be told, it wasn't until I'd say like my teenage years that I really started like to have more of an interest, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think, especially during the Nintendo 64 or PS1 era kind of, it was like I personally, like, especially when you look back now, but I felt this at the time a little bit where I felt a lot of early 3D games were like clunky a little bit. And
we've experienced that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But like when I remember, I used to love one of the first when I started like I'd say like quote collecting. Some of the first games I bought were like the Mega Man games.
Yes,
and
yeah,
because I remember playing those as a kid, and some of my friends had, and like I thought even in the year whatever 2002 or something, like these are better games than some of the current stuff.
For sure, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's the simplicity of it, but I like kind of fell in love with some of the like core games, and I started like picking up pieces over the years of some games that I liked. And at that time, it was purely just for actually playing and not for really collecting.
Yeah.
But then I would say as I got a little bit older, in the late 2000s, I'd say, I started really getting into the collecting aspect of it. And once I went down that rabbit hole, there was like no coming out of it.
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
I felt like I needed to have the entire set.
Now you've got a wall of NES games.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, that's great because, I mean, it's led to, we've had so many, fun times just having that set up, and you can pick from almost anything. Go-tos like Jeopardy.
Yes.
The kids' Jeopardy.
We played way too much Jeopardy. It's like a Christmas Day tradition.
I love it. And of course, I mean, Top Gun also is just one of the most legendary moments in gaming for me, honestly.
Yes.
But I'm similar where like, I mean, there were still NES games coming out in my lifetime, but it was, the Super Nintendo like came out like right after I was born. But in that time, this is actually a very nostalgic console for me because it's the first one I owned, and it's because I think it was definitely after I was born, but my aunt got one at a garage sale with like a lot of games. So this was probably in like a few years after I was born, so like probably in like 92 or something like that. And I remember some of my earliest memories are going over to her apartment and playing NES. And eventually, for a period, she moved to the same town as me, right across the street. And so I'd go over there all the time, and I'd play it. I never owned a Super Nintendo. I would just always go play her NES. And then eventually she moved, but she gave me the NES and a lot of games. And so, like, yeah, like, my earliest, like, memories of putting a cartridge in a console is that, those VHS style mechanism that it has going. So it's very, very nostalgic for me. Even though, a lot of the games were too hard and I didn't comprehend them, it didn't really matter. I would just kind of play them and hang out and die in the first world of every game I played,
Yeah.
And McKenna, right. you have like, you never owned one.
No.
It was discontinued before you were born.
Before I was born, yeah.
When did you first play?
Like the actual on a console, I think at a Zelda Dungeon Marathon. I had played.
So because of you.
played some NES games on like the 3DS, but the first time I played something actually on the NES was at one of the marathons.
What did we have set up? Do you remember?
We probably played a few things. I'm sure we played Jeopardy. Maybe some Wheel of Fortune.
Was this at the bar at the old house?
Yeah.
Okay. Things was coming back to me.
Yeah, you had the little
Fester.
You had the little nook.
Fester's
We got
Quest.
some Fester's Quest going.
Oh, that was a game I played as a kid too. Oh, I loved it. But I
Josh
probably
and Mobley were there too. We were playing.
Yeah.
yeah. It's
Oh,
created
boy.
so many marathon memories, that thing too. So
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But yeah, I think.
Fester's Quest.
Yeah, I had before that. I think I had only played The Legend of Zelda on the 3DS, like the eShop
yeah.
version.
So no, not even. Yeah, we'll talk about it, but not even Super Mario Brothers, which kind of blew my mind.
Oh.
I haven't played a lot of Mario games.
Yeah, that's one thing
Mostly
we found out
just
too.
Mario Kart.
Mario Kart, yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of in the spirit of our show, we thought for our episode talking about this, let's go back and kind of talk about the launch of the game and like the games that launched with it. And we had a fun time playing because we went over to your place, Moss, and you set it up, and we grabbed the games we needed, and we kind of had the stack of games, and we did this in a couple sessions, but we went through and we just kind of played them all together. So that alone was made, doing this episode a lot of fun, because it was like we had our own little NES club nights,
We tried to play all the games. Let's say that.
Yeah. There's going to be some caveats, but you know what? I feel like we got the big idea of all of them. But before we do it, also in the spirit of our show, I prepared a mini flashback segment where we like to go back and give some context of what else was going on in the world at the time. And we'll talk about the dates, obviously, that we're giving. But we're going to go back with what is, I guess, the first North American official release date, even though there's more to it than that. But we're going to talk about October 18th, 1985. The number one song at the time was Take On Me by Aha.
Oh.
Aha.
Aha. The number one movie, and this will come up again, and Mas, I knew you would like this, it was Back to the Future.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, and it was, I was looking at 1985. It was many weeks in 1985. That was probably like one of the biggest movies of the year. Other things going, I got some other actually gaming things going on at the time. So the same month in October, I don't know the exact date, but Atari released Gauntlet, which I thought was cool. That's a game I loved a lot as a kid, and there was eventually an NES version of that. I put this the same year, actually, not the same month, but we were just talking about Tetris, and 1985 is the same year that Alexei Pajitnov creates Tetris on his the Electronica 60. So, before it makes its way over here, but that's when he first created the game itself. So, and that, of course, gets a very noteworthy Nintendo release, multiple. So, yeah, shout out to Tetris. And also, October 20th, so just 2 days after, the Sega Mark III home video game console is released in Japan, which I think that leads to, or is the Master System. I don't quite remember, actually, so don't check my facts here exactly, but, I think it's, Sega's, one of Sega's early forays into home consoles, which will eventually be a bigger factor in the next generation of consoles, but, yeah, Sega, they're doing things.
My calculations are correct. When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
We kind of talked a little bit in our arcade. We talked about some of the Mario and Donkey Kong arcade games, which actually, Mas, you're a big arcade player too, and I feel like there's a lot of crossover into, that style of game. A lot of the early Famicom games and NES games are arcade ports.
I feel like a good amount or a handful of these launch games were actually part of like the Versus series, if I
Yes,
recall, and came out in arcade. I think prior to the NES.
there's some that are ports from just like they have an arcade game and they ported that, and then there's other ones where I think they existed on NES and then those became the Versus games. I think the Versus games were after, as opposed to
Okay.
like Donkey Kong, which they like,
Right,
ported.
yeah.
So we have a little backstory on the NES. Wasn't Nintendo's like first like initial foray into the home console market, but it was their what really established them. And this is because it came after the whole video game crash of 1983, which didn't affect really them as much in Japan. So like the Nintendo actually, this is what's going to be interesting talking about some of these games is, a lot of them come from the Japanese, I guess, equivalent of the NES, which is the Famicom. And a lot of, that was released 2 years prior in 1983. And so these releases, we're going to kind of see there's a mix of games from like the release of that console and then some that are like, coming that were created 2 years later. So there is kind of almost a disparity in like, not quality, but you know what I mean? Like the game development level on
Right.
some of these games,
For sure, yeah.
I also saw that they had planned a different console they were going to release, or like they kind of had to revamp it. Have you seen the AVS that they were originally going to release? It was marketed more in the lines of like looking like a video game console, and then after the whole crash, they were like, we need to kind of change our marketing strategy on this. Have you seen like the prototypes for that?
It was called the Nintendo AVS.
Yes, which I think is what your
Yeah, that threw
Yours-
me off because like if you like we were playing. I have a Nintendo AVS, but it's like a system that came out in like I think it was like 2000. Oh geez, I don't know, maybe like 15 or so. It has like 4 players built in, 4 controller ports, and it has HDMI output, and the pin connector is like super tight, so like games work much easier. And it actually had connectivity to the old Nintendo Age forums for like high score tracking.
yeah, it's a very nice feature, very nice console.
Clearly.
Yeah,
Literally, they named it after this.
yeah. So I actually sent you a picture of it too. Like that's the prototype of it, where it looks a little bit more
Wow.
has a keyboard and all this stuff. But I believe it was because of the with the whole there's the video game crash and stuff like that. They kind of rethought their strategy with how they were going to release this. So the goal, what they eventually did was they came up with the Nintendo Entertainment System, which they thought we can market this more as we'll talk about it with the games, but they were marketing this less as like, hey, this is a video game, and more of like, this is an all-in-one toy / entertainment device. It's not just
Right.
video games. So very interesting, and we'll definitely get into that with some of the peripherals and games they released on there. But let's talk about the actual release. Like I said, the date is a little fuzzy because they also kind of wanted to ease their way into it. They kind of did like a light release. Just I think it was in New York, right, in October of 1985, to like a limited number of stores, and they kind of had to convince the stores to even sell it. So they kind of gave them like a buyback guarantee, like, hey, if you don't sell these, you can give them back to us at no cost. It seems like they probably knew, like, hey, we've got some good games here. If we can get them in front of people, hopefully we can garner some word of mouth and go from there. I feel like that's the strategy.
And I mean, especially since like any home console like that was already out at that time, like the Intellivision and ColecoVision, they were like, the Nintendo was so technologically far advanced than any of those prior consoles.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think Nintendo was fairly like, I wouldn't say confident, but like it, kind of worked. And I think was it shortly after they did like they went to Los Angeles then, I think was their second market.
Yeah, that was in like there's another like slate of games I think that comes out in July of 86, and I think that's LA. I don't remember the exact dates on that one. We could always do a follow-up too and hit on the actual the LA and then the full release. But yeah, they did then go to LA and then to the rest of the country, I believe, or the rest of the world or whatever.
Can you imagine if like this day and age,
right?
Nintendo Switch 2 available only in Miami for 3 months.
Yeah, it was definitely a different time, and it it's like shows too, like Nintendo. I mean, they're just they weren't the powerhouse that they are now too, and that shows. I guess we'll talk about too with even some of the games. The release dates in America it's like a little bit fuzzy because like things weren't just so like documented in that day and age, because it wasn't such a massive big deal like it is now. Why don't we let's just talk about some of the games themselves. So we were looking at the stack, and they kind of separated them into different series, if you will. So I thought let's just break down what we played by the series, and I thought we could start with kind of the most like basic one that you expect to be there, and it's probably responsible for marketing to a lot of people, but that would be the sports series of games on the console. Baseball is one of the games you get on there. Moss, baseball, I mean, you know baseball as well. How did baseball go for you? What did you think?
I thought it was like surprisingly pretty like decent for the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fun. I enjoyed it. I mean, there was a lot to it. I mean, we had like we had a lot of fun with like some of the basic like mechanics. Like once I learned how to start stealing bases,
yeah,
I kept stealing bases, and there's like pick-off moves, and you can throw slow pitches, fast pitches, inside, outside. Like
it's a lot you can do with like 2 buttons and a D-pad.
It was 2 players, which is a must, I'd say, for sports games, which we'll get into a little later. But like, it was fun. I think it having played some of the later baseball games on the console, like it's not quite as feature intensive, but like for a launch game, it was great. I would say my only real criticism of it was a little too slow.
Yeah. It's like a full
just like real baseball.
It is like a full game of baseball, yeah.
We didn't. What did we play? Like 3 or 4 innings, but we played for like 25 minutes or something.
You have to like be down to play some baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
What did you think of it, McKenna?
It was fine.
Yeah.
I think baseball games within the realm of sports games are not something I gravitate towards.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm thinking of like Wii Sports. Like baseball was not the one I really played a lot of.
I gotcha.
But
yeah,
I did like some of the little the nuance to it. Like Moss said, the stealing bases, the throwing different pitches, that was cool.
That was pretty cool. And I think this kind of probably applies to all the games we're going to talk about, but I feel like you kind of said this, Moss, but I think if you compared a lot of these games to their contemporaries, like at time of release, I'm sure more came along later that were better, but we for example were recently looking at a bunch of soccer video game footage, and like a lot comparatively looked like not so great. So I feel like pretty much all these sports games, like compared to like whatever was coming out at the time, like probably exceeded them by far. That would be my guess. I don't have like that much hands-on experience though. Tennis. Mas, you said this was a big one for you when you would stream, right?
Yeah, sometimes I would just open my stream or close my stream, yeah, I'd start streaming and I'm like, oh, let me play some tennis while people like get in, and because it's just mindless fun. I think it's okay. I think it's actually a decent game.
I liked it. I was doing horrible, but I thought it was cool.
The only real downside, I think there's two downsides. One, much like baseball, it's a little too slow. It took a while. I think we each played like one set or something.
And I had my fill after that.
But it's also like, it's the only one, I believe, of these sports games that were on the launch that was single player.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like a problem. Like,
yes.
that they couldn't make it work. I don't know.
What did you think of tennis?
I really like this. Kind of the opposite of baseball. This is something a sport I really like in video games. This is in Wii Sports. This is probably the sport I played the most of.
Yeah.
I agree that it's too long.
For sure.
But yeah, I liked it.
One thing I do like about it, even though I didn't play it enough to sort of get good at this, was, it doesn't, we were trying to figure out, does it have the thing where you move the controller and it kind of like hits the ball a certain direction. And I feel like it doesn't really have that, but looking in the manual, again, it had like, I can't remember how many, but it had like a handful of different types of shots you could pull off depending on your positioning and stuff like that, which felt kind of like realistic, I guess you could say, for an NES game. Like, you can do like a backhand or whatever. So I kind of thought that was pretty neat. Like, if you look at I don't know, a lot of other tennis games, there's Pong, like there's that, but this seemed to have like a little bit of nuance with the serves or whatever, but not having multiplayer, that was kind of disappointing. Golf, that does have multiplayer. I think also, you may remember a few years ago, I think this story came out, but golf, this one there was a lot of games that HAL, I think it's HAL Laboratory, helped port over from Famicom, and this was one of the key ones that they worked on, and I believe helped design as well. But anyway, there's an Easter egg. This game can actually be found in the firmware of the Nintendo Switch, and it was put there as a tribute to Iwata, because this is one of the first games he worked on. So I just thought that was like a sweet little detail. But yeah, golf. Mas, what'd you think? I thought this was a little bit more advanced.
This was like way, way, way too in depth for what a NES golf game should be. There's like, you can pick your different woods or your irons, your pitching wedge. I think you have like 15 different clubs to choose from. You angle it. Mm-hmm. There's accuracy, power. There's the wind. When you get on the green and you're putting, it shows the slope of the green. Like wow. Like, I feel. Yes. I mean, McKenna has made reference to Wii Golf or Wii Sports a few times. Golf on the NES is way more advanced than Wii Golf was 20 some years later.
Yeah. How did you fare playing it?
Yeah, I was surprised by how advanced it was.
You have to, know golf.
I was like, I don't know what any of these... I know I have to putt when I'm, right next to the hole, but I was like, which club do I use now? And, we were talking about how the... whoever goes second definitely has an advantage, because you get to see how the wind affected the first person and what club they used.
Yeah. I mean, that over time I feel like negates a little bit, because you probably get more used to it, I would say, or like you kind of know it. So that's one thing that I found was like, Yeah, like it made it almost again realistic. Was that it doesn't give you information you expect in golf games now, like a pointer of like where it's gonna land and things like that. But that's like real golf. Real golf, you don't get a marker
Yeah, it
of
was like I went out and as a total newbie, just went on a golf course and they were like, "Here you go."
Yeah, probably like. Well, honestly, he probably did better than that even still, and I would say I struggled with this. So, I feel like this seems like one that, like, if you're a golf fan, like you could probably pick up on the nuances of it and like actually get into it. You know. This also this is the second game we've talked about so far, I believe, that you got Mario in. He's also he's the tennis referee, I believe, right? So you also golf as, I guess, someone who looks like Mario. I'm going to say that's Mario, though. That's a Mario to me.
Mario.
I think I had read or saw that I think Miyamoto originally, he envisioned Mario as like sort of this actor that would, just play many roles in games. And I think he wanted to call him Mr. Video. But they stuck with Mario.
This is like the new Peach game.
Yeah, or I mean, even the early, I think of like Super Mario Brothers, where like they have the curtain, they come out like they're putting on a little show, But so we're gonna see Mario in a handful of these games. Soccer was one, I think McKenna and I were both getting into it because we've also been preparing for a soccer game, International Superstar Soccer 64. So we've been playing a lot of soccer. So it was just really fun to kind of get our hands on something that was like a, similar-ish, but a way more primitive form. But Mas, what did you think about soccer?
I don't think I enjoyed it as much as you two. And in fact, I actually played some soccer again after I played some of these games a second time through. And I don't know. I don't like it. I didn't like it. I think it was the weakest of the sports games when I look back at it now. I really don't know how to dribble and shoot properly, or like how to steal the ball. I don't know. It's clearly the easiest one to like pick up and play because everybody knows how to play soccer.
Yeah, true.
It doesn't control as well as the other games.
Yeah,
sometimes I didn't know where my character was running. Like toggling between characters is not. It's not really that good.
The dribbling can feel a little bit weird, like because it's like tied to your like movement in a weird way, and there's like an animation. It is like, I feel like a little bit takes some getting used to, but I think, I don't know, even though they're completely different, I feel like just like already playing some soccer games extensively, I was like, it only felt like I was adjusting a few things in my brain, I guess. But I don't know, what'd you think, McKenna?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was definitely a more like simple version. I think this one and I guess this one, the ball is more tied to the player than any of the other games, I think. Like, instead of just hitting the ball somewhere, it's really you're carrying it most of the way.
Yeah.
And sometimes passing it and shooting it. It did take a little getting used to, but once I got it, I was really into it.
And I thought the multiplayer aspect was fun I think soccer is like a fun multiplayer game in general.
I love that you could pick countries, and there was like the United States, Great Britain, Japan, and the Republic of West Germany, or what was it?
Well, we've learned, actually, we just recorded our soccer episode, and Germany is one of the best teams, right? Was that what we learned?
Yeah, they're really good. I don't know about at that time.
Yeah. It was a fun time capsule, like West Germany or whatever. Seeing them. from football to football, let's talk about 10-yard fight. One fun fact I have about this one actually was this and Kung Fu, which we'll talk about later, are both, I believe they're both games actually made by IREM for the arcades. And so those two games, they're the only two launch titles that aren't originally developed by Nintendo. So yeah, they're like arcade ports essentially. And I think the reasoning with 10-yard fight is, you want to get a sports game for the American audience. You got to get football on there, right?
Why do you think they didn't call it football? Is it because of the confusion?
Could be, yeah. Because even the original is called 10-yard fight. But maybe because they're Japanese games, so maybe they were like, yeah, we got to differentiate it. It can't be called football. What'd you think, Mas? I thought that this one was kind of fun.
I think it was the first game we played, and I was kind of shocked how playable it was to pick up and play. It was fun. It was good. It's comparatively to some of the later football games, you would never play this game
even on NES, right? But
playing Tecmo Bowl or something in the future. It was all right. I liked it. I don't think this is the kind of game I'd want to go back to and play it over and over again. But yeah, I had a good time with it.
How about you?
It was fun.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I haven't played a lot of football games.
We're going to be soon-ish.
Yeah, we're going to be entering our football era.
With football.
But yeah, this one's also, I'd say, very different from the other ones because it's less about hitting a ball, and you're either playing offense or defense at one time, and sort of
you're throwing all kinds of interceptions.
Yeah, it took a second to figure out how to, you definitely have to be throwing to someone who doesn't have a player in between you. There's no throwing above a player.
Yeah.
So it took a little more figuring out, I think.
I liked waiting for the guy to walk across.
Yeah.
That was fun.
That was funny.
Yeah, so those are the sports games. Let's now talk about this series title kind of had me intrigued just hearing the name, but the programmable series of games. Let's talk about, I guess, Wrecking Crew first, which is this one's kind of interesting because this is one legit. It's you're playing as Mario. This kind of bridges the gap, I guess. If we're talking about the Mario timeline, what Mario did between the events of Mario Bros. And Super Mario Bros. He, was working at a construction site.
He got a job.
So add that to the timeline. But the reason they called these the programmable series was because you could actually kind of construct your own levels, and the idea was that you'd be able to save them, but they never. Then they had planned supposedly to implement that feature, but you can't actually save these, so it's kind of annoying because you go in and then you gotta do it all again. But Wrecking Crew, it not only bridges the gap, between these games, from this made up story that I said, but also just from a gameplay perspective, it's actually more of a lateral, or I feel a step down, because it takes away your big thing about Donkey Kong was that you could jump. I feel it's one of the maybe not the first, but one of the earliest games where you're literally jumping over obstacles and across gaps and stuff. And then here it's a little bit more of a throwback kind of platform, a maze platform arcade thing. So I don't know, I thought it was fun, but it wasn't quite as exciting, I guess you could say, as some of other Mario's other early appearances. But what did you think about it, Moss?
I liked the arcade style element to it. It feels like an arcade game. Like I can totally see that like that would fit if it was 1982 or something, and it was like a standalone arcade game. Like you've made the sort of like the look a little bit of like a Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
I recall like dying a few times in the level 1, and then I kind of like got it. And then I think I beat like 7 levels in a row or something. Like, so it's like one of those, once you get it, you get it.
Yeah.
But then I remember I made a level, and I clearly made it too hard. I think.
Yeah.
We were kind of taking turns trying to beat the one level I made.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
I felt like it was a challenge, and I wanted to do it, but if we had unlimited time, I would have kept playing, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Like this would do so well, I feel like, if they did a similar concept, like redid this game with like online, because it like building in this and in Excite Bike, the other game, like did feel a little bit of like Mario Maker vibes, where it's like, hey, try my level that I just made. What did you think of Wrecking Crew?
Yeah, I kind of touched on some of my thoughts already, but definitely got some arcade Donkey Kong vibes. Like it's like Donkey Kong, but with an added element of destroying stuff.
Yeah.
Which was fun. I like destroying the stuff.
Destroying things is fun. Like, and the animation and the sounds were really nice. And it's, I guess that is, we didn't really say what you do in the game, but there you go, you're breaking stuff. But what I think that's cool, because we've got Mario brandishing his hammer again, which, we kind of go away from Mario, other than in Paper Mario, like Mario being the hammer wielding guy. But I do love Mario running around the screen wrecking stuff. That's fun.
I think this would be good if they did another Mario Maker to make like a Wrecking Crew mode.
Yeah.
You could make a Wrecking Crew level.
Smash up levels, yeah. Yeah, Wrecking Crew is cool. You like, McKenna's been into Burger Time lately.
Yeah, whenever we go to an arcade, I gotta play Burger Time.
This kind of reminded me of Burger Time a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Run up the ladder, run away from those guys, salt them. You can't salt them, but...
Pepper them.
Or yeah, pepper, sorry.
Hit them with the spice.
Excite Bike is the other programmable series game, and this one is not all. Like I said, most of these games are developed in-house by Nintendo, and a lot of the big names that we've come to know worked on them. But this one was specifically led by Miyamoto, which I think is worth pointing out. And he this wasn't their first game with screen scrolling, but it was one of the earliest ones they developed with like the side scrolling, which sounds like not a big deal, but at the time it was like kind of a programming feat that you could scroll, the screen wouldn't be just one static screen. And they kind of implemented what they came up with for this into Super Mario Brothers. So I always kind of like that aspect of the game, that was kind of like led to the development of one of the most iconic games ever. But Excite Bike, the game itself, is it's a motorcycle racing game, and you can also construct your own courses. But Mas, what do you think about Excite Bike?
I think it was fun. It was fun. I probably had played this one more than most of the launch games, and so I wasn't actually like looking forward to revisiting it. But then when we did, it was like I can see myself getting into the time trial aspect of it and like competing with friends. Like I think you made a course, if I recall, for this one.
Yes.
And then all three of us were trying to like beat our scores
on this horrible course I made.
And we had a good time with it. It was fun. Probably has a little bit like, with these programmable games, there's a little bit more replay value because you can custom make like the courses. So I think that's like, of a sign of things to come in future decades. But like Good game.
What'd you think?
This was fun. I like sort of the gimmicky racing games. It feels pretty Nintendo-y. I was thinking of like they did a Mario Kart home circuit game, and but I think playing some of these older games really makes you see Nintendo's design philosophy. Like, you can see how it continues and evolves throughout their history.
Yeah, big time. Like, just I thought that mechanic of not trying to overload your engine was like a really creative thing. And then also like that element of having to balance out your bike on jumps and stuff, adds some like fun, like it had a good like feel playing it. This one for me actually was a big one that I played all the time. This is like kind of the first one we've talked about that I have memories of playing back in the day. And I definitely built a lot of courses. I could not say any of them were any good at all, but they probably just had a lot of big hills, Yeah. But this one also, just has kind of it does show like some of Nintendo's like personality, some of like the charm, I think like the music is really cute. I think, the sprites are iconic looking, when you get knocked off your bike and you gotta like get back on, it's very funny. It sucks the programmable thing never came to fruition. I guess the Famicom had a attachment that you could get for it, and then later on, I think with the Famicom disk system, they could just do it. But maybe it might be because I'm going to assume they probably didn't release a lot of programmable quote unquote games, so maybe they just decided it wasn't worth it because, well, we'll talk about it with some of these other accessories, but I think, kind of after they established themselves with Mario, they were like, okay, we don't need the gimmicks anymore. But I feel like that's kind of a Nintendo thing, is let's launch this console with some wild ass gimmicks on there. Let's talk about the first of the quote unquote gimmicks, which is, and I mean, this was such a big thing for me as a kid, but the light gun series of games. Mas, did you play a lot of light gun games when you were younger? For me, it's so iconic.
It was one of those things where I knew everybody, I think, in the world has played Duck Hunt.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't know that there were more than one game on the console that used the light gun.
That's what I was gonna say. Is the 3 games we're gonna talk about are the only Nintendo developed light gun games for the console. So after that, I think the only other ones are like third party. So even Nintendo was like, yeah, okay, whatever. We don't care about that.
So let's talk about Duck Hunt, I guess. Like,
sure.
It is like, because when the Nintendo was in its heyday, Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt, that package game.
I had that pack. Yeah, it was amazing.
And so like everybody had Duck Hunt, and I was terrible at it when I was a kid. But then I don't know, maybe it was like something clicked, and I felt like I was nailing it when we were playing.
Yeah,
and it was fun, and I like how there's a lot of. I mean, it's a very simplistic game. There's not that many features.
It's pretty casual, but I think that is kind of the strength. It reminds me of like Wii Sports in a way, that it's like you can kind of just pick up and play. It's not too tough.
But they do have the clay shooting that's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, so, it's for the experts.
It's fun, and I like how you can play. The second player can play with the D-pad and move the birds or the ducks around.
Yes, it makes it a lot harder.
A lot harder. Yeah, that's actual hard mode.
Game.
I have for some of these, I have some other more fun facts, some historical tidbits. But Nintendo, before they were all in on, making home console games and arcade games even, they produced all kinds of different things. They were like I guess a toy manufacturer essentially, and they did produce like a bunch of different light gun products in the 70s and in that era. And they even actually produced the light gun accessory for the first ever home video game console, the Magnavox Odyssey. Had a light gun attachment, and that was made by Nintendo. So I think that that's a thing they've been doing. They even had a light gun toy that they released in 1976 that was called Beam Gun Duck Hunt, and it was a duck hunting toy game where you like shoot at the target type thing. So I don't know. They've like, we talk about it now how they like to take things out of their past and like reuse them. And they've been doing it, ever since their video game inception. So I think that's pretty cool. But what did you think about Duck Hunt? You're aware of Duck Hunt, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's of course the dog. Everyone knows
Smash.
The dog has made his way into Smash. Yeah. Which is that's cool. All the games we're talking about, they all have some type of move represented by the Duck Hunt dog, which I think is cute.
Yeah, it was fun. Once I figured it out, it's pretty easy to hit the target, at least in the single duck mode.
I did like the different modes. Like they're all like Mas kind of said it. They're fairly simplistic, but I think that for me, that's kind of like the appeal of it. Mm-hmm. This is another one too that has, I guess, sort of like the Nintendo charm to it. I think the little jingles are very nice, and obviously the dog has a lot of personality. He's kind of like one of the early video game like characters I can think of that sort of, sticks out to me as like a character. Let's talk about Hogan's Alley, because I feel like that one was alright, but I don't have as much to say about it. Mas, what do you think of Hogan's Alley?
I didn't like it at all. I thought
we had one mode we liked.
Yes. So the base game, it's just like the enemies appear and it's like shoot them.
There's three modes. One where you're shooting at just static targets, and it's like don't shoot you want to shoot the criminals. It's almost like a police training type simulation. And then they have one mode where it like moves down an alley, presumably, or a street, Hogan's Alley, and the same targets appear. And those are a little, I don't know. The duck hunt alone is way more exciting because the ducks are flying around, and
Yes.
Yeah, this is a little like that.
It was the third mode is sort of that arcade kind of mode where like I think you're shooting like cans and trying to get them to like land on like ledges.
Yes.
Had a very arcade vibe. I like that. That was fun.
That was tricky.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that being fun from like if this was like an arcade game kind of thing and you're like competing for high score. But overall Duck Hunt was I think a better game.
I think I don't know if I played the first mode, but
you got the idea, I think, from looking at it.
Yeah. The third mode was definitely the most interesting. Like, I'd go back and maybe try and do better at it. Like,
I feel like if you do, it's like the progression of difficulty is you don't want to do the first two modes because who cares? But then you want to do one duck on Duck Hunt, then two ducks, then the clay shooting, then these cans. I feel like these cans should have been like a fourth mode in Duck Hunt, where it's like, all right, you've gotten good at this, now shoot these cans. Okay, Wild Gunman is the last one, which there's a couple of fun facts about this one. They actually had a FMV full motion video light gun game for the arcades, or it was an arcade installment that they had made, Nintendo did in 1974, actually, called Wild Gunman. So this is sort of a an update of that. Even that original was made by Gunpei Yokoi, who helped create a lot of these games actually, but he's worth shouting out because he also created the Game & Watch, the Ultra Hand, and Oh, and then I guess for this console's sake, on the Game & Watch, he sort of created the directional pad, which I think this is the first home console to feature that. So, thank you, Gunpei. But Wild Gunman, Moss, what do you think about this game?
I felt it was like more of Hogan's Alley, but without that fun mode at the end.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know. I didn't like it at all. I thought it was too. It didn't do anything for me. It was too easy. I felt.
Yeah.
And like I never played it before, and I felt like I had mastered it. Maybe on my like second playthrough or something. Definitely a game that I would not want to go back and play.
What about you?
Yeah, this one was really, especially the first mode, really slow because you're just waiting for the guy to walk across the screen.
Yeah.
Very, very slowly, and then he turns, or I guess not turns, but and he stops and he goes, shoot or whatever.
You have kind of a generous amount of time to shoot them.
Yeah, I think maybe the only time we failed is when somebody shot before they said to shoot.
Yeah. Yeah, you had an itchy trigger finger, basically. Yeah, it was all right.
And then they had sort of a Hogan's Alley-esque mode where they had
the saloon
just popping
and
up. Yeah.
Yeah,
which had like a set pattern.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's horrible. that's bad.
It's just a memory game.
Yeah, Simon.
I forgot to mention too. This another Back to the Future thing, Moss. But they played this. What is this in Back to the Future 2?
2, when they go to Cafe 80s and the kids say like, "You have to use your hands." Baby toy.
Back to the Future. Maybe it was paying tribute because, it remembered that the game was it was out when their first movie was number 1. I don't know. Okay.
That's like those kids in that movie were probably like 8-9 years old. So that would be like a 19-year-old today, almost, or like an 18-year-old today.
Yeah, what would be the equivalent? Like, what was the time difference? What year was it in Back to the Future?
It was 2015.
2015?
Assume 10-year-olds, so they'd be like 18, 19 years old right now.
Okay. Well, I guess you wouldn't be too shocked to see a Cafe 80s nowadays. Even a Cafe 90s. Yeah. Let's talk about a series that they made even less games of, and that is their Robot series of games.
Yes.
And we've kind of been hiding about it. We have not mentioned Rob the Robot once yet, but that was, along with the light gun, that was a big part of like their marketing of like, this isn't a video game necessarily. It's a toy, I guess you could say. And so Rob, Mas, what's Rob? Can you explain Rob?
Rob is the robotic operating
buddy.
Yeah. So it's like you basically, there's 2 games, and let's just jump into some of the games because I think it's easier to describe. So with Gyromite, there is like an attachment to Rob where there's like a red and blue button, and you put the second player controller like into this attachment so that so like Rob will move around, and he grabs these like gyro spinners, and there's like this attachment that causes the spinners to move rapidly, and then Rob drops these spinners on either the red or blue. And all of this slow, monotonous movement with Rob, all it ends up doing is pressing one button on controller number 2.
Which you need it because the game of Gyromite it would be like not difficult at all without it.
Right, and it goes from being an easy game to an incredibly difficult game.
There's no middle ground on this one. Yeah.
But then it's so easy to break Rob. Like if you accidentally move him to the left or right without moving him up, he'll like knock into things.
The poor guy's a bit unwieldy. Yeah.
Yeah, and you need what I think 4 AA batteries and a C battery to play this thing.
Yeah, your poor Rob. He wasn't up to full speed when we were playing.
No,
sadly,
there was some battery corrosion from last time I played with him. Left the battery in.
Okay, Gyromite. I mean, we didn't really get to fully experience that. I mean, that's actually, I gotta say, just a personal anecdote. That's, I think, Moss, maybe, this might have been like the second time or something I ever hung out with you. The first time I ever hung out with you, I got to play the Philips CDI for the first time, and that was a magical experience. It was like, playing this bit of gaming lore, and I was also familiar with the lore on Rob the Robot, and I think one of the next times I ever hung out with you, you had just gotten Rob for the first time, and we were playing Gyromite and stuff, so I don't know, I always think back to that when I think of Rob, and I feel like it's kind of discussed as like, oh, we don't talk about Rob sometimes, but my experience with it is like, I don't know, it was like kind of charming. But McKenna, what was your impression, I guess, of Rob and Gyromite?
Well, so we played this where we basically had the second player doing opening up the doors.
Yeah, just pressing the button.
What Rob would have been doing, and it seemed simple like that, but thinking about it, like, I was just like, oh, there are some times where you have to like open up one thing and like quickly close another thing. I'm like, yeah. Oh my god,
that would be too much for me. Mas, you seem to really love that aspect of the gameplay.
I do. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a good. It's a very challenging, but it's my kind of challenge. Kind of fun.
You like that kind of like big.
Yes.
It reminded me of an arcade game for sure. Like kind of the level.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good game. I think Gyromite is definitely one of my favorite games from this launch lineup.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, I feel like you would probably, and I liked it a little bit more. If it functioned, I would get more into the mode where I forgot the doctor's name, the scientist, but he moves on his own, and you kind of
sleepwalking.
He's sleepwalking, and you like solely control Rob. I think my brain, it would work better because it's like you don't have to worry about both the games at the same time necessarily.
Right. Yeah, it like playing Rob the Robot, Gyromite, the main mode is like almost like playing a modern game, because like the NES only has two, like an A/B, but like you are using, it feels like you're playing with a controller that has a bazillion buttons, because you have to press the select button to control Rob, and then like Rob is moving while your character is like, you have to be thinking a few steps ahead, and there's so much going on. It's
it feels very futuristic, honestly. This is like what people with advanced brains are playing in the future. Okay, and then Stack Up, we just really couldn't. We didn't have
I don't have the blocks to play. You need the block. But truth be told, you don't need the blocks.
No.
It's like, because that game is not. It's you like pro. I don't even know how to describe it, but like
it's basically the video game aspect is instructions. It's like telling you how to stack the blocks. And then you get these colored blocks in real life, in the physical world, that Rob has to stack in a certain way, and you're just controlling him. But the game doesn't know how the blocks are being stacked. Mm-hmm. So you can just do whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. I like the programmable aspect where it's like you have to, I think there's one mode where you like input a number of controls in a row, and then you click go, and then Rob just goes by himself and does them all in a row, and like all you have to do is like move the red block from here to here kind of thing.
Yes.
it almost is like a tutorial for playing Gyromite.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah,
It's okay. It's in my opinion one of the weakest titles, though. Probably for the whole system, not just for the launch.
Any thoughts on Stack Up? You got any takes, McKenna? Hot takes?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, like the ways they got creative with how to get the controls going, like the programmable thing, and then they had like a bingo where it's like, okay, you have to hit all these
in a row.
Spaces.
That's kind of
to
arcadey.
Get, Rob, like to get the control input.
And there's like other creatures bouncing on the
but then like sometimes you accidentally fill in like a row and a column at the same time, and Rob would like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
It's kind
It
of
had a little bit of a Qbert vibe, a little bit.
Qbert, yeah, that's right. That's perfect. But yeah, these are the only 2 Rob games ever made, so it's kind of sad. I did actually. I think this might even be on the Wikipedia page. I think I saw, but this would be relevant to you, Moss. I don't know if you've ever done this, but I read that one of the homebrew games of 8-Bit Christmas has Rob function. It is? Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've ever played it, but
we should do that on at the NES Christmas party this year. Main event time. We've got the every good video game console, I think, needs a good action series of games. So let's talk about what we've got for action games. And first one I want to talk about is Pinball, which I had read that this was actually, I believe, the first game that Iwata worked on. So, Mas, before you say anything bad about it, think about Iwata and his legacy, but it's Pinball. Mas, what'd you think about Pinball?
Well, out of respect for the late Satoru Iwata, I will simply say, not a fan.
Oh,
look, when I think of pinball, I love playing pinball at the arcade. I feel because it's like it's the hands-on experience a little bit. You're literally you're pressing the flippers and getting the response, and you have control of how hard you press the button and that kind of stuff. Like, you don't feel that in this in a
it's almost a tactile experience is what you're saying.
Yeah, and there's only one, like, I guess, like, course or whatever it's called, like, and it's like you don't even see the whole thing. It's like distributed across 2 screens.
Yes, well, so that's actually a thing that similar to the sports game, I would say this is another one where I think if you compared it to its contemporaries, like, this is actually it's kind of advanced from what I understood. Like, other pinball games I was looking at, they struggled with how to get pinball on, one screen, because they didn't have, like, screen scrolling or things like that. So it was actually kind of a way they were trying to actually make it feel more like pinball, was having the 2 screens. I felt like, personally, the transition between the 2 always made sense, though. I don't know, that never really threw me too much, but I get what you're saying. Like, it's very simplistic for sure. What did you think about pinball?
It was alright.
Yeah.
I don't think it was fun to try once, but that's probably not something I would really play again. I think I'm not really a huge pinball fan. Like, I like looking at the pinball machines and seeing their branding, being like, ooh, like this, what's this Godzilla themed one, which kaiju has it got in it?
Oh yeah, the theming is I think the theming of this one's kind of fun, though. They've got cute sprites and things.
Could have gotten harder, I think.
It has in sort of a Nintendo fashion, it's got kind of that bonus mode where you go into hit the ball into one place and you kind of play a little
Mario's in there, right?
Mario's in there, and he's got and I think Pauline too, and you basically start playing Breakout, which is From that was, I think, what I saw this in. Jeremy Parrish has a really good series chronologically covering the NES called NES Works, and he was showing like that's where I saw like a lot of the comparisons in this one, and from what I was seeing, a big thing they talked about with this was the physics of like the ball and stuff felt a lot better. There was one other game he was talking about comparing it to where after a while people started to realize like the ball in the other games would pretty much go to a few spots when you hit it, whereas like this felt a little bit more fluid, stuff like that. So it's, you know, it's maybe not the most advanced game of pinball. It doesn't have tilt and things like that, but it was definitely an advancement.
Probably played the most pinball on like school computers.
Yeah, Microsoft pinball or whatever
assignments.
Nice.
Yeah, maybe they could have, if they had gone more into sort of mini-game portions. Like if you hit certain points on the machine and you enter a mini-game, that could have been cool.
Yeah, more gimmicky, for sure.
It has to be, like, because you can't replicate the pinball experience from a physical. So, like, you got to include gimmicks, something that's unique to the game. And they did that a little bit with that little side game with Mario, but I felt there wasn't enough. And outside of like playing it with a friend just to compete for score, I don't think I would ever want to go back and play this one.
You know, I could see myself playing a round every once in a while. This was a big one for us. Clue Land. Moss, you were really into this game. I mean, I would describe this as like the most like an arcade game on the whole console.
Oh, yeah. Like I was kind of really so Clue Land, you're like it feels like a maze game a little bit. It's got like, you know, like Pac-Man kind of or Nibbler elements to it, where you're moving your character around. It doesn't play like Pac-Man though, because like when you turn corners, it's not like you're just changing direction. It's almost like you're grabbing a pole and spinning around it, which is it's really hard to wrap your head around. There is a bit, I would say like it's not an easy learning curve to understand.
I think that's why it appealed to you, right?
Yeah, so it is tough, and it's very fast paced, and it gets hard very quickly, which I think is important in a arcade style game. And so like I really like that, and like so you have to like go around this maze and like unlock all the little like bars to make it makes like a picture.
Rupees. There were rupees you're uncovering.
Yes.
I think it's actually the same sprite. I think they just lifted that sprite. Yeah.
I like this is the kind of game that like I think would have done well in the arcade. Like I really think so. Like, you know, if I had an arcade and I was making I would totally make a custom Clue Land cabinet and put it out there and let people compete for high score. That's like a reoccurring theme with what I've been saying throughout this podcast, but like I like the idea of competing for score. And I think this game more than anything
I think what I'm was kind of seeing with you on this, and sort of Gyro might too, is it seems like you like being challenged by a game where you have to play it like in a way you haven't thought of like playing a game before necessarily, like a unique like gameplay mechanic that you have to like sort of like. It's not like, you know, when you, I guess nowadays when you play like a game like Mario Brothers or whatever, it's like someone doesn't really have to know much to like start playing that. But it, you know, with Clue Land or Gyromite or whatever, it requires this whole like new way of thinking about it that's kind of different than what you're sort of trained normally with video games.
Yes, I agree.
What'd you think, Clue Land?
This one was a lot of fun. I probably one of my favorites that we played. It was hard to get around the idea of sort of grabbing a pole and spinning around it, but once I started figuring that out, it was fun to make the images.
Oh yeah,
yeah. It's kind of like if you have like you're on a pegboard and you got character going in between the pegs, and if you're familiar with like the like sort of string art where people wrap string around pegs, you're basically
I wonder if it's inspired by
filling
that
in. Yeah. This is something. There's this indie game dev that I really like called Pancake Delicio, and they make small sort of arcadey style games, and I think it'd be really cool if they did a riff on this game.
A Clue like?
Yeah. I think they could do something really cool with this. Yeah. They did Shotgun King, which is probably their most famous game.
That's a cool game. Yeah. I'm into Clue Land as well. This one too, I liked reading. I don't remember the exact lore, but I liked reading the story in the manual on that one. Ice Climber. It's one of those. It's an early platformer, and the kind of standout thing for me with this game, just in terms of like what's immediately kind of holds it back for me, is kind of the mechanics a little bit. It's got the Mario Bros. Donkey Kong style jumping, which is like kind of a little bit rigid and hard to control, and in Mario Bros. And Donkey Kong it at least works because I feel like the navigation and like the areas are kind of simple to move up. But in Ice Climber, you're these two ice climbers climbing up a mountain, and I think it's much more challenging, especially like once you get a couple levels in. But I mean, Mas, what did you think about Ice Climber?
So this is another one of the games that I went back and revisited after we played it. When we played it, I felt a little frustrated by the controls a little bit, because yes, it is. It feels like Mario Brothers a little bit, but Mario Brothers as in like the classic Mario Brothers, not Super Mario Brothers.
You can't like once you jump, you're like committed to the jump.
Yes.
Yeah, it's one of those.
I've actually since played Mario Brothers in the arcade as well, and I realized Ice Climbers plays a little better than that. And
okay.
It's actually okay. And like,
I mean, it did come out after, so I mean, that's ideal, I guess.
I got a better grasp of it, and I kind of was playing, and I was kind of enjoying it. I think it's okay. I think it's a very average game. It's very like it's a good like when you look at this launch lineup in its entirety. I feel like this game is a little more unique than anything else.
Sure,
there's nothing else like it, and but it was fun, and it's a good two-player simultaneous game, which there's not too many of. I think. Now I'm like thinking about this outside of the sports games. I guess Clue Land is 2 players, but there's not that many of those.
Oh yeah,
so,
and
I think it's fun.
The 2-player has sort of the. We talked about this in our Mario Bros. Or in our like arcade based episode, but like Mario Bros. Has this mechanic that I compared to Four Swords Adventures, where it's like the but counter operative at the same time, where you're, it benefits you to kind of team up, but you can also like kind of screw the other person over. Ice Climber, McKenna. What do you think?
I like, I guess I like what they were going for. It is one of the more unique games in the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
I did struggle with the controls, but
and you know the Ice Climbers too,
from
right?
Smash.
So Smash. That's our and Rob. There's so many characters.
Yes.
Genesis right here on the NES release.
Yeah. Are there more Ice Climber games?
No. I think this is the only one, as far as I'm aware. I don't know. I don't know my facts.
I wonder. I'm curious what like a modern Ice Climber game.
They should do it again. I feel like.
What would they do?
I don't know. Yeah. I feel like it's just another similar to Wrecking Crew, just like a fun like play online competitively. Celeste, yeah, yeah, like climbing a mountain with good platforming mechanics. There you go. This one it fits alongside, I think, the ones I said, like Duck Hunt and whatnot, where it has a little bit more personality to it too, like just in the game itself. You know, the music and the characters are cute, and like there's a cool polar bear in the game, and I don't know, it's a little like goofy, you know, like taking the eggplant to the top of the mountain. So it kind of gets points for me for that. So I do like the game, even though like I feel like gameplay wise, like the core gameplay, I wasn't super hot on. But one, I did like the multiplayer, and I also did like that you can kind of start on whatever level you want. So that's kind of fun. It's just kind of like free to play wherever, and the game just sort of continues on. So there's some.
We beat the game.
We beat the game. Yeah. I mean, even then, it was still kind of a challenge to go to that level and beat it. So
yeah,
you know, I felt good about it. Other game that was not actually developed initially by Nintendo, like I said, Kung Fu, which is another Irem was who originally made it, but then Nintendo ported it, and there's a couple interesting tidbits about this I wanted to get out there. One, it's actually a loose adaptation of a film starring Jackie Chan, Sammo Hung, and Yuen Biao, which if you know the podcast Movies That Whip that I do with Adrielle, we've talked about some of their films, but it's called Wheels on Meals. It's a martial arts movie, and it's also loosely influenced by Game of Death, starring Bruce Lee. But in Wheels on Meals, I believe even the characters might even have the same name. I know I've got a lot of like half facts in here, but so that's kind of cool. But then also this game, Miyamoto worked on the port of this game, and again, this game has side-scrolling on the screen, and this was a big inspiration to him, and it eventually led to, you know, him getting it, you know, incorporating that later on down the line. So it's kind of a part of the story of Super Mario Brothers. And then one final thing too, another point of inspiration is the developer of this game. He went on to also do Street Fighter, and King of Fighters. So this is kind of actually one of him dabbling with fighting games as well. But Mas, what's your take on Kung Fu?
Well, actually, I've played the arcade version of this a lot more, and it's been a while, and I can't like visualize a side by side right now, but I feel like this game was pretty like true to its form, true to the arcade version.
Yeah, I can see that.
Visually, I don't think it's very nice to look at. I don't know, something about the characters doesn't. I don't know. It's not. It doesn't have the charm like Ice Climbers or like Mario Brothers has a little bit.
Yeah. If I mean, it feels. I mean, maybe it's partially because it is based on like these more like adult oriented things, you know, but it does feel a little bit more like it's less cutesy, you know.
Like I think this is probably the one game where I think the general public actually views it pretty positively that I just couldn't get into. I don't know, not my cup of tea. Like I think it takes a little while to get used to it, but then I feel like the difficulty.
It's tough, yeah.
I think when we got to that second floor and there's no snakes or something, like I don't know, I didn't really enjoy it, and it's probably in the lower third of these launch games for me.
I wasn't like that hot on it compared to some, but I can see the appeal, and like I felt like it was fun to just go around. It was like it's also kind of, I guess, early beat 'em up. I think that's also some of the DNA for those games the developer went on to do. So, McKenna, Kung Fu?
This is probably my least favorite game in the lineup. It's the genre is not my jam.
Not your style, yeah. That's fair.
Which, you know, if you've been listening to the podcast, you've probably heard me say that fighting games are not really my thing. Yeah, it was fun to watch you play.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was. All these actually were just made fun by playing them together. Like, for sure.
Yeah.
So,
it's probably worth mentioning. Like, even the games I think I didn't enjoy, this one included, were still okay. Like, there were not. I don't think there was any real. Maybe pinball for me, but I don't think there was really any stinker for me.
they're all right, but I want to say I think one is exceptionally great, and that's our last game we're going to talk about, which is Super Mario Brothers. I don't even know what to say about Super Mario Brothers because it's such a smash game. Yeah, Mas, what were you going to say?
Like, one thing about the NES launch lineup is these games, 16 of the 17 of them, are all like very simplistic games for the most part. Some have a little more mechanics that are a little more advanced, like we talked about with like Clue Clue Land and even golf. But like they're all like on one or two or three screens kind of thing. Some of them have some scrolling elements to it, but not much. But they're all small games where you basically experience almost the entirety of the game in 10-15 minutes kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Super Mario Brothers, which is like, it's like a colossus compared to everything else on this system. There's 8 worlds, there's 24 levels. There's all assortment of different kind of landscapes to play in. There's light levels, dark, like night levels. There's underwater. There's the castles. There's a good variety of like power. I mean, there's so much going on, and the gameplay is so smooth. It's like a good, like it starts off like where anybody can pick up the first level, and for a first timer, you know, they might die a few times, but they are able to complete the first stage. But then even for the most advanced players, levels like 7-2, 7-3, and 7-4 are very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's something for everybody here. And like, when I think of the NES library, like some of those later games especially in the like 89, 90, 1991, 92, like the later years are so far more advanced. It's almost like the NES had 2 full life cycles, I feel.
I mean, pretty much, yeah.
But Super Mario Brothers is probably the only game, I think, from this initial batch that kind of feels like almost like a later NES game and holds up.
Yeah, well, I think this was, like, I kind of hinted at before, but, like, a lot of these other games were made, you know, years prior to it. So, like, even though it was released at the same time in America, like, this was, you kind of see, like, I talked about what they're inspired by. This was actually kind of, like, a culmination of some of the things they had learned doing these other games, you know? And in fact, I think we were watching a video on the disc system itself, and I believe they viewed this as being like the last hurrah of the Famicom, and like, okay, now we're moving over to this disc system thing, which didn't end up working out. But it was almost viewed as like this was the final point on this, you know, this hardware that we've been running it on. But then, of course, it went on for so much longer. So, McKenna though had never played Super Mario Brothers.
No.
What was your take?
Really cool.
You know who Mario is, obviously.
Yeah, I've heard of him. He's from Smash. This definitely feels like light years ahead of the other games we've been talking about. I died to the first Goomba.
That's okay. That's okay. You got the hang of it though.
Yeah, it looks great. It plays great. It sounds great.
Oh yeah, just the look and the feel, like those two aspects make it stand out big time. Like right away playing it, the biggest thing I feel like, again, that is sets it aside from the other ones is the jumping.
The athletic jump.
Yes, Miyamoto envisioned this genre of game being called the athletic game, not the platformer or whatever.
Which is, I mean, like, it's like parkour. I was saying it's like parkour is like real life platforming.
It's very fitting too when you think about it compared to one of the games we've covered, Super Mario 64, is that it's based around these. Well, I can draw the comparison there actually, because Super Mario 64 is built around the mechanics feel so good, and it's because it's all built around like basically like a few buttons and like button combinations and like the subtlety of and the context of like how you're pressing the analog stick. And I feel like that really starts with this game, because like whether or not you're holding down B when you jump off the air and how you control your jump, and then how you, even when you land, there's a little bit of a momentum that you like can either go with or try to halt. Like there's a lot of like subtlety to the jump, and I feel like that's giving you that much control is what sets it apart from jumping over a barrel in Donkey Kong or something. Not to throw shade on Donkey Kong, I love Donkey Kong, but and then I wanted to touch on too the vibe and like the world of it. Like this is like really, we saw some things, and we saw like the Koopas in Mario Bros. But like this is like, I think everything we know that's like of Mario comes out of this game for sure. Mm-hmm. Like the Mushroom Kingdom, all the enemies, the music even. This wasn't the first game, but this is like kind of the, like, I feel like the first big game for Koji Kondo composing. So just like, yeah, just all of that like Mario stuff is here. And I don't know, they've kind of, since this game, kind of just been going off of the back of this game, I feel like. Big time. Yeah, dude, everything. The sound effects sound so good. Like, I don't know, it's a nostalgic thing for me because I played it so much as a kid, but it's still, it's just still even very playable now, I think. So it's hard to overstate how great of a game this is, I think, even to this day. Shout out to Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka also, who worked on this. That was a big one for them. Great launch. Mas, how would you feel if you got the NES somehow in 1985 in New York?
Well, like ironically, I believe the set that I have came with Rob and Gyromite and Duck Hunt and the light gun.
Yes,
which I think was the base. Like at the time, it was like the Mario Duck Hunt combo didn't come until later when it was like a wide release.
Mm-hmm.
And which is a little bit of an odd choice. I feel like if I had Duck Hunt and Gyromite as the launch games, like they were clearly trying to separate themselves from what people thought of with video games, home consoles, with those two. But like overall, I think this is probably, I think, a good variety. I mean, there was a lot of different. There's something for everybody here, because the sports games are there. There's the arcade kind of style games. There's the brand new, like only like some of the platformer games. The light, so. I think overall, like I said earlier, not many, if any, stinkers on here, and that's something I can't say for most of the like system launches in the future for Nintendo.
Yeah. Oh, it's either that or they only have like one or two games.
Right, like launch with 3 games or something.
Yeah, McKenna, what do you think overall? What's your takeaway with this set of games?
There's a lot to choose from.
Mm-hmm.
Good variety. Something that widely appeals.
Yeah,
It does feel like they try to get something out at launch that has a wide appeal.
My thinking is they with just how far and away superior and great Mario Bros is, Super Mario Bros. My thinking is they're like, we got all these games, with this variety, but we'll create this pack that Mas has, this weird toy pack. That's the marketing. But I feel like the end game has to be, we'll get Super Mario Brothers in front of them, and that'll be the real console seller. And that was like, I feel like what actually solidified it. So once again, we have, after our arcade episode, we have, Mario coming in and basically being the kingmaker of the console, I feel like. And, that also reflects onto our podcast overall, and pretty much every other Nintendo console is Mario's always there in the beginnings in some form to help put that console on the map.
When you get hold of the Nintendo Entertainment System, when you master Rob the video robot and meet the challenge of Gyromites, when you shoot the light-sensing Zapper, when you play the system with so many arcade hits, you're playing with power. The Nintendo Entertainment System Deluxe Set. Batteries not included, Super Mario Brothers, and other games sold separately.
Yeah, Moss, thanks for coming on. This is a lot of fun. Is there any other final things you wanted to get out there before we get going, or anything you wanted to promote?
I just want to say it was a lot of fun playing these.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe we can do round 2.
I would love to, because, these games we're talking about, they're part of that. They're part of the, what they call the Black Box series, which we didn't even really touch on, but, you look at the cover and the marketing for it, they have all, like, a similar design. And there's more of those games that come later in the next year as part of their soft launch. So, yeah, maybe we could do another hangout and do another collection of games. I think that would be a lot of fun. Thanks again, Moss. This is a great episode. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you in the next main episode, whatever that may be. So, see you later.
Bye.